just out of curiosity though, I was wondering what was what was your political awakening, if such a thing even exists, but I mean, like, was there like a moment where you thought to yourself like everything that you had heard growing up might not be correct, and how you started viewing the world started changing from a singular did you have a singular moment like that?
I don't think I had a singular moment like that. I think it's just like with time and just like a collection of events, like especially just like reading more leftist critiques, like listening to people more, learning about history more. I mean, I'm way more left now than I was like when I was back in college. And like I was kind of to the left in college, but like not understanding like a ton. Like, I mean, I'm older, so like
Yeah.
like I was an adult when 9/11 happened. Like I remember being fed the whole, hey, like these people, they hate us because they ain't us. Like they they don't like so I remember being skeptical of that, but like I didn't have the information on that, like the whole backstory on that. And like even I actually recently watched I just watched Charlie Wilson's War over again. Like I
Mm.
remember seeing it in the theater like when it first came out, and that is still American propaganda. It's like, oh, we went over there, we helped the people beat the Soviets. No mention of the fact of how like ridiculously religious extremists that they were. No mention of the fact that we were giving money to Bin Laden or anything like that in the movie. It's just like, all right, we're beating the Soviets, cool, we beat the Soviets, and then as at the end of the movie, it's like, oh, and we just didn't donate enough money, we didn't raise any money for them to like rebuild or anything like they did in like Japan, for example, after we dropped those nukes on them. And like I remember seeing that movie originally and thinking, oh, if we had only done that, if we had only done whatever. But it's like we made wildly bad decisions with that, number one. Like,
Yeah.
number two, it did not tell the whole story of like the fact that there was actually like a movement going on, like with the whole Afghan war thing, and like how, like, to the right, like the people that we were giving all of these money and weapons to, and then watching that movie again, like from a more leftist political perspective, it's like y'all leaving out a lot. Like there's a lot on the table that y'all leaving out here, actually. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then if you look at um like looking at other countries and stuff like that, well, or looking at other countries and stuff like that as well. Like, for example, if you look at Germany, like they teach kids about the absolute worst thing that they have ever done as a country, and they make it known of how they got there. They make it known exactly what they did. You
As
know,
they should.
yeah, they have field trips to the different concentration camps. They have field trips to like the memorial centers and the Holocaust museums and everything. Like they get properly educated on their country's misdeeds. Our history is presented to our children and ourselves, and people fight for our history to be presented this way, as we were always right, even with when we were a little bit wrong. It was just a little bit wrong, but we did that little bit of wrong for the right reason, you know? Like,
Yeah.
so like looking at all that stuff just like made me question things more. And like once you start questioning things and you start looking for the answers, it's like I can't really stand here anymore. And then like once you start digging up history on stuff, like there's just humongous rabbit holes that you fall down like, damn, we did that, we did that, we did that. Like I recently made a 1 hour long video about the history of bananas and the banana industry.
I watched not the whole thing. I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched about half of it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's
Yeah.
like,
It was really
how
well
many
made.
coup d'etats did we do, so that people could have like, 50-cent bananas like right now? They were like much, but that's something that, the effects of that are still with us. Like I go
Yeah.
to the store, to my grocery store, and I can get a banana like that costs less than $1. And like, even though it was shipped to me from, thousands of miles away, most likely from
Guatemala.
Ecuador.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, like I live in Washington State, we have apple orchards like maybe 2.5 hours away from me, and an apple is double the cost of a banana. There's no reason that that should be that way, other than the fact that there was a ton of imperialism, a ton of people losing their lives, and governments being toppled over and over again, and people working in horrible conditions, and
Yeah.
still to this day being like very harshly affected, by our imperialism, so that I can have a 50-cent banana, or that I can have what, like $1,000 iPhone now, because like
Right.
look look at the other countries in the world, and you can see this stuff like, oh, okay, this is still happening. Like everywhere in the world, you can see that colonialism thing and be like, oh, damn, like
So
this,
it wasn't just like one thing in particular then. It was like, just
yeah,
a chain event.
yeah, a chain of events of just like being curious about the world, which in turn will make you curious about like your country, and like why why you have a 50-cent banana, for example, or why
Right.
you have $1,000 iPhone, or why people in Africa that are farming cocoa have never tasted a chocolate bar. Like I work in the real estate industry. I can get free
Yeah.
chocolate. I get free chocolate every week. There's just random chocolate sitting on people's counters. Take one, it's free.
Right.
And there's people that have never tasted chocolate that are actually mining the stuff that needs to go into a chocolate bar. Like, come on.
No, no, you're not wrong. I mean, when you spell it out like that, you would think that that would lead to endless amounts of curiosity for people. And yet there are so many people who have just they come under the sentence of it's always been this way. So they don't
Yeah.
really think about it any further than that. And I think that's truthful for a lot of people. They don't think about like, where does this stuff come from? How is it so cheap? How is it that I can buy a t-shirt for so cheap? And where is it made at? Why are all the t-shirts made in a certain like one or two countries? Why are all the socks made in one or two countries? It just,
Yeah.
for me, it was a little bit different. I had, strangely enough, I had like yeah, a conspiracy like theory video that's kind of like, I think it like unturned the first like screw, I guess you would say. I had a friend of mine. You remember LimeWire?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course.
Throwbacks. I guess Gen Z, they don't know that one. So I friend of mine, we were trying to like download The Dark Knight. It had just come out on like DVD. We didn't want to go out to store and
Okay.
like buy it. Tried to download The Dark Knight, and then it wasn't The Dark Knight, even though it said it was The Dark Knight. It ended up being a conspiracy theory video about 9/11. And not the best way to like have your eyes open up to the world around you, but I'll never forget, like, after that, like, I think, years removed, I think the video was probably ridiculous, but like the point of it was is that like I started like questioning things I'd never questioned before. It kind of just, it sparked like a natural curiosity in me that I just hadn't really had prior to that moment. And I was like, wait, what if the government is lying about things? Like, I just never had that thought cross my mind before until that moment. I was like, wow, maybe the government lies about things. It's just, and it's
Yeah.
interesting kind of like how that domino effect kind of like went from there. And then I found myself being a lot more critical of the government in general, like while things were happening. This was the time under Obama's first term, and I had voted for him in the first election that was my first election I could vote in, was the 2008 election. Voted for him, was excited when it happened. And then I noticed that some of the things that he had promised in the campaign weren't happening. Where he was like, we're going to get out of these wars. And I was like, oh, but we're not getting out of these wars. Like, I'm going to shut down Guantanamo Bay. And then didn't shut down Guantanamo Bay. And he's like, I'm going to rescind the Patriot Act. And then he extended the Patriot Act. And then I was like, wait a second, maybe the government lies about things. And then that was honestly it. That was the domino. It just went from there. And then I've been more or less critical ever since then. I was just like, I'm not going to just blindly accept what I'm told. I want to see the proof. Like, don't just tell me you're going to do a thing, show me what you're going to do. And then
Yeah.
more often than not, when politicians tell you they're going to do a certain thing, they usually don't do the thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite frustrating.